Make no mistake, I absolutely love how this page ended up. But in the middle, I made a huge mistake when I attempted a certain technique. And if you watch this video, you can avoid this mistake and have art journaling success. Hi, I'm Creative Katie Karen Burchill. Welcome to my channel. I am working on my 8.5 by 11. This is Artist Loft mixed media paper. And this page started when I was flipping through my napkins and I came across this beautiful daisy napkin. Now, this is a hostess napkin called Shasta Daisy that I got from Ninny's Napkins. All my napkins come from there. And while this one might not be available, there are many available. So I cut one of the panels off and this fits perfectly across the sides of the page, which was what drew me to it. Now, initially, I was thinking I was going to use the entirety of this, and that would make my kind of an Insta background. I peeled off this extra layer, and look at the details that are still here. I'm going to put that on a page, and it's going to break another page, and just add that grunge to it. As I was saying, I was going to put this full on the page and then do some painting and collaging on top. But when I laid it out, I changed my mind and I decided that I'm going to watercut right where I'm showing and just use the lower part of the napkin. I can save the top part for another project. I just wanted to add some variation. So, as I said, I'm going to water cut. Now, the process of water cutting, you grab a liner brush and you put a little bit of water on it and you run it where you want the napkin to get weak, and then you just tear away. This gives a deckled edge that when you glue it down, it kind of disappears. Now, when you're doing floral napkins and the like, there is no hard edges. If the petal is a little longer, a little shorter, a little piece falls off, it's very, very forgiving. So I'm just going to take my brush, and I just work small section at a time, put the water on, let it soak in, rip. Put the water on, let it soak in, and rip. And I've left this in real time so you can see just how long this takes. And this is my preferred way to cut napkins so I don't end up with that straight, sharp edge. Now, when I do this, I might do all the detail, I'll cut out everything, or I might just do a rough rip or water cut and then go back in and get the little bits afterwards. So here I've sped it up a little bit just for the sake of shortening the overall video. Because after all, once you watch this, you can go to your studio, your craft room, and start creating, because that's the goal. It isn't to watch videos, it's to get busy and get creative. So the napkin is the starting point. You do not have to use the napkin as it is. You can edit it. I can cut off parts of it. I can layer parts of it and use what I want. I can even combine elements from different napkins all on the same page. So sometimes there's a signature or a trademark, and you want to be aware of where that is. Yes, you can paint over top of it, but maybe you can just selectively position it so that you don't even have to deal with it, which is what I did. Then I decided I want something taller here. So I'm looking at the leftover piece and I'm deciding right at the top left-hand corner, I'm going to cut out that daisy. So I'm just going to water cut it out and I'm going to piece it together with the other one, making a composition that is uniquely mine. So that's going to kind of go there. And I like that extra height there. So now that I know exactly where I want it, I am putting gel fluid matte medium on here, gluing down the napkin. Lift it up, put it down. I'm very gently pushing it down. I'm not worried about wrinkles. Those wrinkles are just going to add to it. I, in order not to rip it, if you put saran wrap and then use the saran wrap, you're less likely to rip the napkin. And then I do the other side. Now here, where that matte medium went, where it isn't under the napkin, that is the beginning of the problem, the mistake that I made. And we'll talk more about that later. Remember, you're going to learn from my mistake. You're going to be able to avoid it because you've watched this video. And I'm just giving it a coat of fluid matte medium to seal the napkin now. And that's really important if you're going to put any medium on top, if you're going to overpaint it. Once it's completely dry, I'm just cutting off the excess part of the napkin by flipping it to the underside. It's just easier to cut that way. So here's the technique. I'm going to do a gesso resist. Now, in order to do a gesso resist, you need to put the gesso through a stencil or with a paintbrush onto absolutely raw paper. Because it's the difference between how paint will soak into the raw paper versus on top of the gesso that gives you that gesso resist. Now remember, most of this paper is raw paper, but I did put the fluid matte medium on. And that's where the problem comes in. So here I'm taking gesso and putting it through the stencil, applying it with a makeup sponge. And it's white on white, but you can see the little bit of shimmer there, and that's really important. So then I'm going down here. Now remember, underneath this, it's not raw paper because some of this has been painted with the fluid matte medium when I glued the napkin down. And you'll see what happens because of that. So now I'm going to colorize. I'm using a combination of Hooker's green with Naples yellow. And as soon as I apply this, the raw paper takes the paint, the pigment, differently than where you've placed the gesso. And you'll be able to see the pattern. Now I've slowed this part down because in this part, top right-hand corner, the gesso resist actually works according to plan. Now you can see the stenciled, the gesso that I put through the stencil there. So once you put the color on, because it's a gesso resist, if you come with a baby wipe, you can wipe back and you get this kind of light ghosting effect that I want it to have. So I continue to colorize, and then I'm noticing right along where the flowers are that the paint isn't going on as well. It's not showing up. So we have part of this is showing up as I want, and then parts of it are definitely not right there and all through there. And right about now, that's exactly what I'm saying. Oh, what is going on? Why is this not working? Why did this fail? So what I should have done is put the gesso through the stencil first onto the page, then colorized, then put the napkin. But I'm in it now, so plan B is I'm just adding more color, the Naples yellow and the Hooker's green. See, look how beautiful, where the resist worked, but then you have that patch of where the matte medium was. So I'm just adding some color in. I'm even painting in between where the daisy is, that green. And then I'm going to try to get that same kind of ghosting light effect by stenciling with white. So I'm positioning the stencil back where the gesso resist was supposed to have been. And I'm using white gesso, but you can use white paint here. White paint would be a little more opaque. Actually, I'm using a little bit of gesso with a little bit of Naples yellow, and I'm getting the effect of the gesso resist instead of a full-on proper gesso resist. But you can see that patterning there that looks so good. So avoid the mistake that I made trying to use the gesso resist technique by doing the gesso resist part before you touch the paper with any other medium. But there's always, always, always a workaround. And as I said at the beginning, I absolutely love how this page turned out. I wasn't sure about putting green in the background. I was going to go neutral beige, unbleached titanium, but I'm so glad I chose the green. I love this page so much. This is a page that I would take and I would put it on a canvas because I do love it so much. So now that I've got the pattern from the stenciling, the linked stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, I want to add some black stamping or lighter black stamping. And I grabbed this from Songs of the Sea collection. This is a texture stamp, a good general one, has nothing to really do with the sea. And I'm just stamping that along. I'm runging up the background, adding just one more layer of interest. I'm not trying to get a perfect stamp. That's why I don't have the stamp on a block. I just want little bits of this patterning, this texture. Now, these stamps I did get from Ninny's Napkins. She carries a lot of the Stamperia stuff. And over time, as one collection ends, the stock disappears. She brings in other ones. So I'm just knocking back some of the stamping that is a little too prominent and just adding a little bit more. I grabbed my script stamp and I am stamping with yellow ochre or yellow oxide. Depending on the brand, it could be called either. It's that deep golden color. It's a shade darker than the Naples yellow. And I'm stamping with it because the centers of these daisies are that color. And I just want to introduce that a little stronger into the background. So in the background, we have the stenciling, we have the mottled paint color, we've got some stamping with the one stamp, and then we have the script stamp. Love, love, love the background. If I was doing it on a canvas, I would put modeling paste through that stencil. So I would add that texturized look. Now I'm going to brighten the flowers. And I'm doing that by using white gesso on a small round brush. And I'm just painting the center of the petals. So this is brightening them. They're more kind of yellow, brown, beige color. And by putting this white gesso in the middle, it's just adding, it's brightening it up. It's making it whiter, which is allowing it to stand up more from the background. So you can see some that I've done here versus the ones that I have yet to be done. Also, when I'm adding the gesso on one layer or two, it's adding texture, and the texture from the napkin is also showing up. But I'm putting the gesso in the middle of the petals, and I do go fairly quickly. I'm not overly worried. Sometimes I've extended the petal shape. So when you remember when we water cut, I told you you didn't need to be precise. This is why, because I can always paint it in. And we're not snapping a photo, we're painting it, and it's a little bit abstract. So there I've elongated the petal. And anything you do here. And flowers are a really good place to start when you're over painting. But this one with the daisies was so incredibly easy. And there you get a good close-up of that background, all the stamping and the stenciling and how it all worked together so well. This makes it look like you've painted it, not like you've just glued down a napkin. And while I encourage you to try the overpainting technique like this, and I know you can do it because it is super easy, you can just leave it as the napkin by itself if that's where your comfort level is. There you see, I'm elongating that petal. Kind of surprises me that I like this background as much as I do because I'm not a fan of green. Green is, I love it in my plants in my yard and garden, and I love my flowers, but green is not my favorite color. But I love this background. And just one more daisy. Like all in most of this video I've kept in real time because I think there's value in showing you how long it actually takes so you don't get a confused idea about that it can happen so quick. But all in all, this probably took just over an hour from start to finish. And you can easily break it into sections, glue down, do the background first with the gesso resist, if that's the way, then do the napkin on a second time. Now I'm giving the centers a wash with that yellow oxide. I just want to brighten them up as well. Remember, they're my focal image. I'm just adding a little bit of color. Now we're moving on to kind of the finishing stages. I'm going to edge my page and I'm using my angle brush and I'm shading around with black acrylic paint just to get to frame this page. It's something I do, I would say 100% of the time. And it's tying in. We've got that black around the petals. And I'm thinking I'm going to put a sentiment. It's probably going to be black. There's some black stamping on the background as well. And it's just tying all those elements together. I know at the time of this video, Ninny's Napkins just got in a whole bunch of new napkins that are listed there. So I'll link her store in the description box. And there's a coupon code. All along, I thought I'm going to put this little fairy in amongst the daisies. I like the idea of the kind of the cartoon fairy with the more realistic flowers. But then I just was second guessing that and decided to instead just stamp a sentiment. So I stamped out the phrase, enjoy the little things on scrap paper, positioned it where I thought I wanted it, and then I am going to actually do the stamping. Now, there's very little texture on the background part there, so I can stamp right onto it without fear that it's not going to stamp very well. So I've just put some black acrylic paint on that blending foam, which I'm using kind of as a stamp pad, and then I'm using my wooden blocks and stamping it out. And some are getting darker, some are lighter, and I like that variation. And then I'm wiping off the acrylic paint off the blocks off camera. I'm cleaning off that acrylic paint. If you get a splotch somewhere because everything's permanent underneath, I can wipe it off without fear that I'm going to smear something. Now, when I started stamping with these letter stamps, you kind of there's a learning curve. The more you stamp with it, the better you are. And I'm not trying to put it on a perfectly straight line. I think that's really key. I embrace the randomness and the imperfection of it, and I think that adds to it. So there, it just didn't stamp dark enough, so I'm just grabbing a baby wipe, wiping it off, and then restamping. And that's how easy it is. I couldn't do that if I used the archival ink. That's why I prefer using the acrylic paint. And removing a little bit of the smudge. Go as slow as you need to. There you can see it's not exactly straight. And then the last word. And there we have it, a little splatter with gold paint that has been thinned down with water. And that brings us to the end. So I hope you can avoid the mistake with the Gesso Resist. But I do hope that you do try the Gesso Resist. I know I'm going to put that in my queue to do a Gesso Resist and do it right because I really like how it looks. So sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. I learned. I'm just peeling off the tape by heating it up. That just releases the adhesive. And there we have the finished page. I am very, very pleased with it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe I should put the fairy here. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section. Until next time, go get creative.